Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris and the Asics Metaspeed Edge Paris. Edge Paris and the Sky Paris are the latest versions of Asics' carbon plate racing shoes. Asics has always had these two shoes at the top of its racing lineup, and throughout the generations they've got a little bit more similar in style, and actually with the latest models they are very similar all round in terms of design, price, everything really. So the price is the same on both. It's £220 in the UK, $250 in the US. You've got the same stack and drop on the shoes as well. It's a 5mm drop with a stack height of 39.5mm at the heel and 34.5 at the forefoot. That's different to past models where the Metaspeed Edge would have a higher drop and lower forefoot stack height, but now those stats are the same on both shoes. They're both very lightweight shoes as well, but the Metaspeed Sky Paris is ever so slightly lighter. So in my size, in the shoes I tested, the Sky comes in at 188 grams or 6.6 ounces, whereas the Metaspeed Edge Paris is 195 grams or 6.9 ounces, so pretty minimal difference in weight. And like I said, they're both lighter than most of the other carbon shoes on the market from other brands. Comes to the design, you've got similar elements throughout both shoes as well. They both use Asics' Motion Wrap 2.0 upper material. It's a very lightweight material with minimal cushioning around the collar and tongue, but it's a very good material for holding the foot down and giving you a nice breathable feeling while still having that lockdown you need in a racing shoe. They've both got Asics Grips outsoles with fairly minimal coverage, especially at the heel. Probably got a little bit more coverage on the Edge Paris, which is maybe where that slight extra weight comes from. But for both of them, if you're a heel striker like myself, you might have to be a bit wary about ripping up the back of the shoe. And then both shoes in the midsole use Asics' FF Turbo Plus material. This is their best foam. It's bouncier, lighter and softer than the FF Turbo material used on previous models of the shoes. And they both have a full-length carbon plate. However, and this is the big difference between the shoes, the positioning and the style of that plate is different. So with the Metaspeed Sky Paris, the plate is a little bit flatter and it sits a bit higher in the foam in the forefoot. You can see there it kind of runs through at a fairly similar level throughout the shoe. Whereas with the Edge Paris, you've got more of a scooped plate, so it dives right down to the bottom of the foam in the forefoot. Now this is the big difference between the shoes and facilitates and supports different running styles, Asics says. So throughout the various generations of the shoe, the Sky has been aimed at bounding runners who, when they run fast, tend to mainly increase their stride length rather than their cadence. Now, important to say that pretty much all runners will increase both their stride length and their cadence when running fast, but runners who'd use the Sky, or stride runners as Asics calls them, would predominantly increase their stride length. Now with the Metaspeed Edge Paris, it's designed for runners who would predominantly increase their cadence when they are running faster. So cadence runners is what they get called, which makes sense. So the idea being that the plates will give you a bit more bounce if you're a bounding runner with the Sky, and then facilitate that high turnover and give you a more propulsive feel with the Edge if you are a cadence runner. I think it's important to say now before we dive through, this is just what Asics says, and in real world results might not always be the same, and these two distinct blocks of runners, there's lots of other factors that go into runners, but that is how Asics categorizes the two shoes.
In terms of fit, I've got both of these shoes in a UK size 8. That's my typical running shoe size. That is the same size that I had the Metaspeed Sky Plus and the Edge Plus in as well too. I would say the fit overall has been very good for me. I would say the Metaspeed Sky Paris has fit a little bit better in my usual size. I think it mainly kind of boils down to the kind of length of these shoes. This is a little bit longer, the Edge Paris. And I think, while it has been an issue for me, I think maybe, there might be a reason or an argument to go half size down in the Edge Paris, where I think the Sky Paris fits a little bit more true for me. The volume is more on the top of your toes as opposed to the front of it. When you go back to kind of the general feels of the uppers, very similar across these two shoes, very good overall. The lacing and the tongues are identical, so again, ones that you're going to need to play around with to get that optimal kind of lockdown. The level of padding in the heel is the same as well too. So yeah, for me, I think the Sky Paris has fit more true to size for me. As I think with the Edge Paris has been fine for me in my UK size 8, but there might be an argument to go half size down this shoe if you prefer something that fits a little bit more snug.
Comes to fit, it's a simple one for me. I've got a really good fit in both of these shoes in my normal size, a UK 9, a US 10. Sometimes with Asics, I'll go half a size down with their cushion shoes, things like the Nimbus and the Kayano, but throughout all generations of the Metaspeed shoes, I've been very happy in a UK 9. It's the same with these two models. Got a good amount of room in the toe box. It's a fairly dialed in fit. If you like a very roomy fit on your racing shoe, then maybe you can consider looking a half size up, but I think it's about perfect for a racing shoe and a good hold around the heel and midfoot. So onto the run test, and I think these are two of the best new racing shoes released this year, and I do think the Metaspeed Sky Paris is the best overall racing shoe available. It is my favourite racing shoe, the one I've used to set PBs and run a lot of races in this year. I've done over 100 miles in it now, and I think the Edge Paris is very, very good when compared to shoes from other brands, but within Asics' own brand, I think it falls short of the standards of the Sky. I am, though, an edge runner in theory. Cadence is definitely the main feature of my running. Like, I mostly increase my cadence when I run fast. I have very high cadence, probably too high. Maybe it's something I should work on, but it goes like above 200 in races, and I don't have a particularly long stride length. Having used both shoes extensively, I prefer the feeling of the Sky. I've always preferred the Sky, actually, with these two Asics shoes throughout the generations. I prefer the feeling, and I've had some really good results in it. Like, I've run my marathon PB of 2:27, I've run a 70-30 half, I've run 5Ks, loads of hard sessions, and it just feels fantastic to me. So recently I went and did a workout in both shoes where I was doing a 6x1 mile workout. I used the Edge Paris for the first 3 miles and then the Sky Paris for the last 3 miles. They were all aiming to do 5:20 miles. On the last one, I kicked up a bit on the final 400 meters just to have a bit of fun. And in that workout, I did feel the difference between the two shoes. I also did a lap wearing both at the same time, and they're both really good. I felt like my performance was pretty much equally good in both of them, but I prefer the feel of the Sky. I feel like you get more uplift and propulsion from the toe off, in particular with the Sky Paris. With the Edge Paris, it feels to me like the drive from the plate comes around the midfoot and then it kind of pushes you onto your toes, and you don't really get as much spring off the toes as you do with the Sky Paris. So I thought it'd be fun to look at some of the stats from this workout and also a couple of 5Ks I've done in the shoes, and they're pretty much identical, which I think kind of buys into the idea it's much more the runner than the shoes, obviously. And even with these shoes that are designed for different running styles, if you look at the mile reps I did in the shoes, the average cadence, stride length, ground contact time, vertical oscillation is pretty much identical on all of them. It's interesting that my cadence was slightly higher in the Sky Paris though, and then my stride length was slightly shorter in it, but we're talking absolute millimeters. I didn't actually include the 6th rep when averaging out these numbers because, like I said, I kicked on and ran like a 5:09 on that rep, so it's the stats were slightly distorted compared to the other ones. So you can see there the stats are pretty similar in both shoes. I have got that difference in feeling, but I think there are actually some more interesting stats from the 5Ks I've run in both shoes, which obviously on different occasions. Like when I was testing out the Sky Paris, I ran a 15:51 park run, which is my park run PB. That was mostly run solo on an all-weather path in a park, a couple of laps, one very small hill on the route, so not ideal running conditions. Whereas with the Edge Paris, I ran a 15:50 at Battersea Park, 2 very flat laps with a group of very fast runners, perfect racing conditions all round, but pretty similar times. But if we dive into the stats on those runs, can see again that my cadence is higher in the Metaspeed Sky Paris and my stride length is shorter and my ground contact time is shorter in the Sky Paris and my vertical oscillation is a little bit lower. So it feels like almost the Sky Paris is facilitating my high cadence, short stride length, kind of low bounce style better than the Edge Paris, despite being designed for the kind of runner in theory who has those kind of stats. So again, though, the stats are all quite similar, but I do think it was quite interesting that I'd probably expect the opposite to be true with the numbers there, but actually the Sky Paris, like I say, even higher cadence, shorter stride length, but less bounce, that kind of thing. All marginally interesting because again, these are runs on different days. I was in different stages of my training cycles, different conditions, but I thought it would be interesting to have a look at those two stats. But obviously it's all quite marginal as they are quite similar stats all round. But the big takeaway would be that my results are there in the Sky and I prefer the feeling of it. And I do think it's the better shoe for me, regardless of what Asics says about cadence and stride runs.
Now, in terms of my running experience in these two shoes, I've used them for the same types of runs. I have raced at 5K distance with them. I've used them in my 10K, half marathon race pace. I've done track sessions in them. I've done, run longer in them as well too. And I would say overall, my feeling of running and running faster across those distances has been very good in both of these shoes. I don't think there's a huge amount in it at shorter distances. I think they give you similar qualities over shorter distances. And when I've raced at them at 5K distance, I think ultimately they are, bouncy, lively, aggressive, really get your feet turning over quickly, what you want, I think, at shorter distances. That's what I've found across these two shoes. I think it's ultimately when I've upped, going longer in these shoes, I've started to see a bit more of a disparity in terms of the experience. I think the first thing for me, I think that really kind of stands out is that the Edge Paris is a slightly more firmer feeling of the two shoes, and I've run longer in them. It's not overly firm, but I think it's definitely, I've noticed it against the Metaspeed Sky Paris, particularly the forefoot of this shoe, where I think definitely the Sky Paris has a softer edge. And I felt when I've started to cruise at my half marathon pace, I've noticed that a little bit more, that it just feels a little bit more comfortable to do that in the Sky Paris for me in comparison to the Edge Paris. I think also when, these aren't shoes to kind of ease off and run slow in, and kind of, when you do start to tire, they can be a bit more awkward to be in or to be running it in. I think with the Metaspeed Sky Paris, I found it maybe a little bit more awkward when I have started to tire in this shoe compared to the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I think just because I said you've got that slightly softer feel overall for me. There's a good level of foam here to, make it a little bit more comfortable to ease off in, but ultimately these are shoes that are going to feel awkward when you are getting a bit tired, but I think for me, the Edge Paris has felt a little bit more awkward when I have tired. I think ultimately when I have done harder sessions in both of these shoes, I haven't felt like my legs have been really beaten up the next day. And I think that is, you know, a massive plus on both fronts. That they are shoes that, while they are, you know, really kind of aggressive in terms of that experience, in terms of that ride, you know, when I have run harder in them, I haven't felt like they have really kind of, you know, made me kind of feel like it the next day. So I think that's a plus on both fronts. I think outsole wise, they may be different in terms of the color of those kind of outsole rubbers, but I think ultimately in terms of the coverage and protection, the experience is very similar. You know, the level of grip is very good considering you haven't got a huge amount of rubber here. And I found when I've run, you know, mainly in dry conditions, they've been absolutely fine. Slightly wetter ones, I think they're going to be absolutely fine, like the previous shoes. I think outsole durability, as I've said previously, I think the resiliency of these foams compared to the previous version of the foam has been a lot better, particularly at the heel. But I do think ultimately you're going to get the same level of durability across these two shoes, and they're going to be ones you're going to save or want to save for those really important sessions when you're running at your race pace or training at your race pace, but also on race day as well. So yeah, for me, I think, you know, across the board, running fast in shoes has been very good. I think shorter distances, there's not a huge amount in it. I think longer distances is where I've started to appreciate the slightly softer feel of the Metaspeed Sky Paris, you know, based on my running time, and just feeling, you know, slightly less firm than the Metaspeed Edge Paris. As I said, I don't think it's going to be a huge amount in it. I think it really kind of boils down to, you know, if your running mechanics really work for these shoes, particularly over those longer distances. But yeah, you know, overall, very good shoes to run fast in. So my verdict on whether you should go for the Asics Metaspeed Edge Paris or the Metaspeed Sky Paris. Now, the way I look at it is that these two shoes are closer than they ever have been. They are similar weights now. They have a similar drop. The level of foam that you're getting in there that's kind of delivering that ride and that experience overall is very similar. And I do still think these are shoes that are great to run and racing at shorter distances, and I think are better suited to running longer and racing longer as well too. If I had to pick, I would be going for the Metaspeed Sky Paris. Now, I put that down to a couple of things. I think the first thing, it's not a major thing, but it is the lighter of the two shoes, not by a huge amount, but it is lighter. I think more importantly for me is, I think these are both shoes that kind of excel at those kind of shorter distances when you're running faster at shorter distances. But I have just noticed I found the Metaspeed Sky Paris more comfortable running longer or running at my marathon pace over longer distances and my half marathon pace. And I feel like if I wanted a shoe that could cover all bases in terms of distances, I felt like this has been the more comfortable one to do it for me. And I feel like this has a slightly firmer edge on the longer distances. It's definitely softened up from the Edge Plus, but I do think when I run longer in these two shoes, this has felt a little bit better to run at my marathon pace in this shoe. So for me, I would be going for the Metaspeed Sky Paris. It just edges it for me in terms of that softer feel and just being slightly lighter as well too. As I say, there's not a huge amount in it, and I think if if your running mechanics works on the Edge Paris, then I think absolutely there's going to be a shoe here that's going to work well for you. But I think if I had to pick, I'd be going for the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I think it just gives you a little bit more on those longer distances, and is also a slightly lighter shoe as well too.
So it comes to the verdict. I think there is a difference in the feeling of these two shoes. It's a little bit more marginal than it was with past models. I think these are both very, very good super shoes, and it's worth trying them both if you can, just in case you do prefer the feeling of the Edge Paris. But for me, I think the Sky Paris is the one that stands out as something a little bit special. The Edge Paris is very good compared to other carbon plate racing shoes, but it is, you know, pretty similar to them, whereas I do think the Sky Paris at the moment leads the pack for me in terms of the overall feeling and overall design you get from the shoe, because it is such a bouncy and impressive shoe and such a lightweight one. So if you just have to order one and you don't get a chance to try them both, I would pick out the Sky Paris of the two. But there is a difference in feeling. You might prefer the feeling of the Edge Paris, but I think overall the Sky Paris is the leading super shoe in the Asics range, and certainly the one I prefer. That's our comparison of the Edge Paris and the Sky Paris. Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you've tried them both and prefer one or the other, please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.